Good.
Yes, speak over.
Good afternoon. I call to order the City of Ocean Shores Planning Commission. It is Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. The time is 2 p.m. We'll do the roll call and then do a motion for excuse absence. Commissioner Ward. Here. Commissioner Barr.
Here.
Commissioner Schultz. Here. Commissioner Wallace. Here. All right, Dan sent me a notice a few days ago that he had another unforecast appointment this morning. So do we have a motion to excuse Mr. Ricker?
I motion.
From Mark, we have a second,
Second.
Terry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good, it's on the record that way. All right, the minutes, due to my fault, didn't make it in the packet. Miscommunication here, but we have them passed out by hand. I'm gonna give everybody a minute to read them. And then we'll get a motion to approve the minutes for the July 11th meeting. And that was after we had a record on rapid turnaround, something we like to say afternoon. And then I had a technical glitch.
I move we approve the minutes with one exception, please. We correct Commissioner Barr's name in the minutes.
Where's that?
Top, second.
It's several places, 2 or 3 places where.
Okay, yeah, 2 hours.
2 hours,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Other than that,
That motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I,
All right. Before we move on to the agenda, the one other mistake that I made somehow was I did not include new business item number 2, which is the proposed final low density, single family residential code. I have copies of it. It's only 2 pages. So before I pass it out and we amend and we approve the meeting agenda, is everybody comfortable with just doing a quick read? Or do you need the full 2 weeks and we move it to next 2 weeks? Any discussion? It's pretty brief. It's 3 pages and we've been talking about it for like 3 weeks.
yeah, quick read should be fine.
Don't any issue with doing it based on a passed out, so here's a copy. And it's just a reflection of what we've done on the low density single family, but before we get there, so do we have a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
I so
Moved,
I second.
seconded. Did you get both of those, Carrie?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, a quick discussion on public comment before we do that. As you know, we have changed how we did public comments based on them remembering that in the past, we used to have a second public comment session to allow people to bring up things they may have seen or observed or want to have comment on that occurred during the meeting. In general, a good idea. And unlike sort of previous and other meetings, it's been more interactive, back and forth. Not quite standard meetings on how we do it, but for now, it's okay, and until somebody in the commission says we want to change that sort of open format, we can continue that way. I will, however, please emphasize, everybody on the planning commission is an unpaid volunteer. All right, none of us are getting paid. We all put time and effort into this. Some of us put significant time and effort into this. So if you have a comment, please, 99% of the time, be respectful. Understand that what we are here trying to do is protect and figure out a way that this city can continue to grow in the most reasonable and best way for everything. So if your public comment starts with an attack on the membership or a statement about how we don't care about the environment or how we're killing all the wildlife, that's just not helpful. It's not required. It's the second set of comments are not a required set of comments. We meet all the open public meeting acts with having the unresponded opening comments. We sort of moved to this new format as a way to just get more involved, because I view this as a way that the citizens of Ocean Shores can contribute with helping us develop the future of the city in a much more open and inclusive and working together forum. And most of the people on the planning commission, I think, feel the same way. We'd love to work with the public. But when it gets ugly and insulting, we don't need that. So we pretty much don't have to do that, and we won't do that if we continue to get those comments. The other item is, if you're speaking, especially commissioners and people in the public, please face the owl and enunciate clearly. Because if you go back and try to hear the recordings, they're very hard to hear. For some reason, the owl knows if you're looking at it, and you hear is much better, and I don't know why, but it is true. So please try to do that. So, and I don't mean that to be like Debbie Downer, I'm just saying that I'd love to continue in this vein of the two sets of comments and the interactive and gather around the map. But it's gonna be hard to do if people get negative. We've got enough negativity around, we don't need it in this room. So, now that I've said that, do we have any public comment in the room before we start?
I do.
Go ahead, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I like your format.
Good.
You let us bring in stuff that we have on our minds to the agenda before you start the meeting. And then after the meeting, after we listen to all the discussion, we can also talk to you about what we heard. So thank you.
All right, and online, I'm gonna give Don, we haven't had you in a while. Don, do you have any comment before the meeting?
Can you hear me okay?
Don, very good today.
Yeah, no, I have no comments at all, and I also appreciate the format. It's a very interesting way to do things, and I hope you can keep doing it. So I'll just listen on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Vita, anything for the meeting?
I don't have any comments right now. I might after I see your copy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, so I passed out everybody and I didn't get one, I don't think, to Marshall. You could send that down. No, he doesn't need the minutes of the low density, single family residential code. So I'm gonna kind of walk through the code. We've gone through it like 4 times. The idea of this is, so you know, is I'm taking an entire chapter 17 and calling it sort of the working record copy. So this is cut right out of the only chapter, and you notice that we've been referencing in and out, we've been making changes, we're trying to keep up with those as well. So this is cut out, and so the idea is we walk through this, and then we take a vote. Do we want to consider this where we are right now, the R1 low density, single family residential code? So purpose, the only changes are, I deleted the in order because it was bad grammar, and changed the should to shall. You can see I've used strikeout and bold italic because color highlighting doesn't work. We went through all the permitted uses in great gory detail, spent all of our time referencing out for the rest of chapter 17. And felt that all of that was okay, but we did go into some of these other chapters and made minor changes that will be reflected when we get there. Conditional uses. We decided that resource extraction probably isn't an applicable conditional use unless Marshall came up with something that said we really needed it. And Marshall, I looked again and couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I don't see where that, and you know, unless we get into the concept of over 499 cubic yards of sand being removed from a parcel to be able to develop that as resource extraction. When I think resource extraction, I'm thinking more about,
Sale.
yeah.
And that's kind of where we came from that. And I think that was a carryover from something else. The second page, prohibited uses, we didn't change anything. Homeless services are prohibited. The density, we kept the same, and keep this in mind as we go. And we kept the 7,200 square feet the same in all the R1s. We didn't change R1 much. We felt okay with all of the general regulations as far as front yard depth, side yard depth, minimum rear yard depth. We felt that paragraph F was redundant with 17050, because it states the same thing. We decided we wanted to take that out. We actually thought the manufactured home one was okay, and then if you go all the way down to 1716070E, again, the exterior siding, primary structures, we said really that's already covered by 17050, so we'll take that out too. And I will say, Marshall, as we're on manufactured homes, in my drive around with my districts today, I was quite surprised at the number of spec manufactured homes, which is kind of new in this town. People putting manufactured homes on spec, not pre-ordered.
Yeah.
However, they're looking quite nice.
They are.
I don't know if you would agree.
I do, they're standing out and getting harder to distinguish from some of, I've got a couple of small stick-built homes in the R1 that I thought were manufactured, and they said, no, that's actually built, that was stick-built, you know.
But
So,
in general, I'm thinking the manufactured homes with the addition of the porch and the other stuff that's in there
mhm.
are getting better. But there's more of them than I thought in town. As you drive deep into these neighborhoods, you're seeing more and more going in, and more going in as a spec home. Which is interesting, because is that sort of new, were people doing manufactured homes as spec homes in the past?
I'm surprised.
Oh, there's probably 3 or 4 on the market right now,
Mhm.
so, go ahead.
I suggest an alteration to, permitted uses F, right after 3, accessory dwelling units, it's permitted at 1750-250.
I thought we had said that we we went at 17, let me pull that, and that covered all residential zones, and we were gonna leave each other there. We talked about, what was the, give me the reference again, so we can look at it, I can look at it.
1750-250.
1750-250. And we talked about that, and then I thought we said that 1750 sort of was all encompassing, so it didn't need to be a specific permitted use in one particular.
I didn't know what to think.
1750. Well, those are scrambling. Paul usually gets there first, because he just looks it up online. 1750-250.
It's the
We know
very end of the architectural features.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, basically, because 1750-250A says 1 ADU shall be allowed per residential lot. We thought that allowed the ability of ADUs in all, and that's kind of where we left it there. Okay. Anything else, Marshall, you saw that we missed in the proposed R1 code?
Nothing that's come up.
Good. Any discussion over this side?
No, I'm not.
Remarkable, how little we changed.
Yeah.
We get through it, but that's okay. So are we prepared to entertain a motion to approve the draft R1 low density single family residential
I
code?
make a motion, we approve it as written.
I'll second.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Oh my gosh, we did one. It's a red letter day. Unbelievable. We actually got it done. All right, so, and we're a little bit out of order here. Zoning code update purpose and principles, it's actually page 4 of the package. And this is gonna constantly be a changing document as we go through this. So what I've done to this is I've deleted the to reflect the 2020 Shores Comprehensive Plan, we didn't need to say that. Very much emphasized correctly, it's to recommend actions to the Ocean Shore City Council that identify correct discrepancies, simplify the code, reflect past and present realities. What I also realized was missing is the 5th bullet, sustain and improve the natural beauty of ocean shores. I mean, I don't know, that's kind of what we're doing. As I did my walk around this week, I saw some interesting opportunities, so. We got both so focused on the residential and business, we sort of forget the greenways and parks. We don't want to do that. So I think that's sort of something to also look at as we're going. So any comments or changes to sort of the working draft
No.
of that?
I like the addition.
Okay, and I think as you get stuff, bring it to the meeting and we can continue to change that. So on page 3, we're on item 4, I have started to collect the number of zones we're starting to fill here, and it's not less, it may be more, which will be interesting. So the R1, the RL zone, low density, single family residential. We've been through that, we're in pretty good shape. Today, we hope to start the RM zone, which is medium density residential, which in my mind, looking at them, and they're included for discussion later today, would be 1718 zone R2 duplex, 1720 R3 triplex, and 1722 R4 zone fourplex. That's sort of where we're at. Then we got the RH, which would basically be R5, 7, 8, and 9. There is no R8 in Ocean Shores, Marshall, I don't know why, we skipped it. We went R5, 7, oh, we do have 8 and 9. Then we've already talked a little bit about the RL mixed zone, low density residential mixed use. We talked about that as being like, light commercial. We already picked a spot where maybe it would be appropriate, where the, the model would be the bodega on the first floor with the residents above it, sort of thing. Then we've got the RL. It's basically, that would be RM, that's the typo, medium density residential mixed use, and then we've got the RH. Mixed zone, high density residential mixed use. As we go through this. I mean, there is a discussion out there, there may be. A way or a need or a desire, we'll start talking about today as we do the RM and the RH. That we just incorporate all that in all RNs and RHs. The exception will be, we're all gonna have to redo our walkabout on that area down by Damon Point. That whole area, what's the street back in there? That's all mixed use in there, Marshall? Got everything in the world.
Silver King,
Yeah, so I think if you walk down Silver King, I drove that again today for the third time.
it's a hodgepodge.
So the Silver King would be the definition of uncontrolled, unmanaged development. When you go through it, and not through anybody's fault, it's just, it was a hidden pocket of B1 that everybody threw everything in. And it is what it is. So we sort of, as we're not there today, but I'm not gonna ask anybody to do the new walkabout, I'm gonna ask everybody to go into that Silver King area and get some ideas, cause I just drove it about 2 hours ago for the third time this week, and I just can't get my head around it. And that may be what we originally said was gonna be RM mixed use, but it's just a hodgepodge. Cause you've got Dean's excavation storage yard, abutting residential. And everything's mixed in, it's really strange, and then those courts are massive, the paved areas in there on the left side of Silver King. Headed towards that other, they've got this huge, like mini Walmart parking lots in there for courts. It's just generally a strange thing that our forefathers in the city left us. You want to talk about Marshall?
The ones off of.
Silver King on the southeast side of Kilder, they're the huge square courts. That would have been better to be like a paved circle instead of a massive parking area.
Yeah, that'd be off of Wawona, Shemia Court.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, those two. It's just strange looking in there. So if you go Wawona and Silver King, drive those two short streets. From what, Tonkin, is that the name of the app?
yeah, from Tonquin down to Adventure.
Down to Adventure. If you drive those two streets and walk them, I know everyone's seen it. Then we're gonna sit here and scratch our heads what we do. Do we try to mash that all into some do anything zone? Or do we really look at fixing it? Because there are like 8-unit condos back in there for nightly rental. There's single family homes and manufactured homes, everything in the world back there. So we'll have to look at that. And that came to mind as I was working on this list. Then we get the downtown corridor, we've got B1 zone retail, B2 zone general commercial, and B3 zone resort tourist. So sort of a running total of what we've talked about for zones, which will change over time. Maybe not, and we'll talk about that today as we start going through some of this. So before we do walkabout, I think we're gonna start. They're always painful, going through the R2 zone. And remember, we're sort of looking at RM, which is medium density, as we go in this. And some of the thoughts before we get into all of this, because it's a very short piece of code. And we look at what little of it there is left on the map. One of the things we've been talking about all along is to meet the goal of allowing middle housing. I heard that term a lot in the last 2 weeks. By allowing subdivision of lots without a common wall structure. So these areas, we need to start looking at things like minimum lot size. Getting rid of the minimum square footage in 17050 of 650. Or maybe leaving it for the RM and getting rid of the RH. These are all sort of the alternative we can start talking about as we go through this. We've seen this as an opportunity. And as I drove around, because there's a couple, what will be RMs in the areas I looked at. I think especially on some of the corner lots, you could actually take some of these 7,000 square foot lots and divide them into 4. And get access in there for parking and everything else. It's possible. You've got the cottages already there where that was done. Ocean Spray Court, is that right, Thorne? That was our
Yeah, there's
Casimir's.
two there,
Moose Court.
two developments across. the
Yeah, and those worked, and those are on a 7,000 square foot lot, I believe.
condos.
Yeah. But those
The
were,
lots on the south side were large.
okay.
I forgot what size they were.
Okay, but they were able to subdivide those, or those could have been subdivided.
Yeah.
With some sort of common access easement for the owners in the rear. So I kind of look at those as what would happen if we did. And those look to be in the 600 to 800 square foot.
They're smaller, about 400.
Oh, they're only about 400? Casimir's cottages are?
Mhm.
Okay. So, but it's still, it's an opportunity. And there is a market for the small footprint because the twin homes on Marine View are started selling. Those double twin homes on Marine View on the south side, they've sold like 2 of the 4 that are finished. And those are tiny, those are like 400 some square feet. So people are buying those, and those are common wall subdivided, right? So as we kind of go through this, looking at zones, then looking at the map, does this make sense? And we might have some of the walkabout. So. And the last thing, and this is something we're gonna bring up and then we're gonna go through it, because it's the very first sentence. Almost every existing R2, R3, R4 area in town is already encumbered with single family houses. So what most cities would do is say, this area is set aside for medium density housing and we don't want single family. Too late, and that's kind of gone. We're suffering what we're suffering from past development, and there are single family homes. You've got an RH going on again on Ocean Spray, where they're building that 6-plex apartment complex, I assume. And right next to it, Highline just put in a single family foundation.
Yep.
It's like a beautiful piece of R9 property, I think, or R7. And it's a single family home going on it, where we could have continued if we wanted. And that's actually would have been a very nice apartment court area, because there's green space behind it. I mean, a developer, if he had multiple lots, could have done some really cool stuff back there with sort of an apartment complex. It's next to Casimir's cottages and all that. However, I don't think at this time we're gonna say no single family homes in RM, or is there a discussion we need to have about that? That's very radical.
Well, especially if we've already seen stuff poured for single family. Because now what do you do with that permit that's already been let?
It would be no construction of new single family, is what we would say.
Right.
Kind of what we did in the business district. Do you have a feeling, do we have like, we're not like running out of R2, R3, R4 lots, really.
There's still quite a few of those available.
Yeah, and I know there's a ton of them, that's a good roundabout
Yeah,
on Butter Clam or that weird section out of there, they are out there. So is there any sort of discussion of saying no single family?
It's a really tough one for me because that's kind of what we have done in the past. Well, we'll just allow single family to kind of go anywhere and then we get kind of shoehorned into this place to your comment about, boy, we could have had a nice area for high density multifamily in here. And if we kind of continue that, we're just gonna erode that opportunity. So it's a tough one for me.
All right, then we don't have to finish it today,
Right.
and I think you may want to, maybe drive some around some of the areas I talked about. There's two in my walkabout, the one there off of Ocean Spray and the one off of, I think, between Butterclan and Wainashi on the north side, Triplex area.
Yeah.
There's probably the one by Ocean Spray is probably very few single families in there, not overly developed. I mean, so do we want to say medium density only and finally break the habit of doing that? And I'm gonna give you the devil's advocate. The other opportunity is, which I'm gonna bring up later as we get through this, is say transient lodging isn't allowed permitted use in RM. If you do that, you're gonna quickly engender single family transient lodging construction.
Right.
We've seen that.
Yeah.
But we need to, in my opinion, get transient lodging out of the business district, because we're running out of business properties.
Mhm.
Because everywhere you turn now, they're building them on everywhere they can, they're building residential. Because you can do it, because you can do transient lodging, because you can't do transient lodging anywhere else. The flip side of that is if we say you can do transit lodging in the RM, then it's all gonna go single family transit. So it's a hard one. I really don't know. So those are the sort of two things we're talking about. Any thoughts about either of those?
Well, my thought is in that area where the sixplex is going in, are they all the others? Are they single family or single owned lots?
The sixplex? No, sixplex is a truly an apartment building.
Right, but I'm thinking without looking
Yeah.
at that the other lots that are available, are those owned by individuals with just, they only own one lot, which is gonna be very difficult to do a sixplex or something like that? Or are there blocks owned by a certain individual where development would be possible?
yeah, I think they're individually, I don't think there's a single owner that's got a large group of home or a large group of lots in that particular area.
One place that occurs is around the so-called shopping center down there. There's a guy that owns a bunch of lots around that.
What's on
Over the 4 acres down there that's called the shopping center on that corner, of Rainview Drive and Ocean Shore Boulevard, northeast corner.
For that commercial lot?
Yeah,
That we're gonna talk about that lot.
he's got an owner, somebody else owns lots surrounding him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's TXE.
Yeah.
I mean, that 4 acre lot, that gets to, I'm wandering here. But one of the things I was gonna put together is challenges. One of the great challenges you brought up is larger scale commercial.
Yeah.
And then I stumbled across that lot. And that lot is like an ideal commercial lot.
It's the only one.
Well, no, the one across from the library.
Yeah.
No, the one across from the post office. I mean,
Right.
that was monstrous across from the post office. Like 6 or 8 acres. But,
10 acres.
yeah, I mean, so there are basically 2 5 acre plus commercial lots left in town. I've always wondered why nobody built there, now I know. But one of the things, and I know I'm wandering and I'm getting to the walkabout, but that's one I'd almost like to say, commercial only. No residential, no overnight rentals, let's preserve this for its truly intended use, which was, our opinion was B1 without residential. Do you have thoughts on that,
Don't
though?
get a chance now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, we could do that.
There's several places you have a chance to do that before somebody decides to build a house there.
Mhm.
I've always wondered why nothing was built on that corner. Now I just happened to look today again, or went for a drive by, really, that's one large 4 acre lot. It's one of the largest lots in town left, right?
I can tell you that the lots surrounding that, the person that's looking at that would like to explore the subdivision of individual smaller single ownership. And if you could throw transient rental in with that, it would bake the cake, basically. There's a desire to develop, that type of, development
Yeah.
in that area.
And I know I'm getting ahead to the walkabout, but it's very germane to this. Because it's, one of the few areas in town that isn't overcome by single family residential. The little corner, for some reason, is not been overly single family built. There's a couple, but it's not like. Not more than 20% built. Which is amazing. So, all right, so just thoughts as we go through this is. The pluses and minuses of allowing transient rental. Excluding. Single family, but we don't want to, because if we want to do middle housing on a subdivided lot, by definition, you've got single family. So it's just very hard to write sort of what, I think we all know what we want, but getting there is hard. So. On the purpose, very first, single family. Low density. We would definitely change that. Well, low density and medium density, right? Medium density, single family. And. I would for now say multi-family dwellings. And let's not define. Provider, other uses would be allowed only if they're compatible with values and consistent with. As you go through this, R2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, say the exact same thing. The only thing that changes is the number of dwelling units that are allowed. In the RM. Multifamily dwelling units up to 4-plex, maybe. And then let's leave it at 4-plex for now and then decide if we back it off to triplex. Because this is where those of us that went through the whole dwelling unit hell about a year and a half ago definition. I now understand reading all these codes why we have a dwelling unit in the code. Because the dwelling unit is the 6-plex, the duplex, the triplex. Drives everything, so that on a non-subdivided multifamily lot, is that the best way to describe it?
Probably, and then distinguish between the row house type development, because there's a distinction in code when you separate vertically as opposed to horizontally, then it changes the building requirements.
So when you separate,
So when you go from like a row house to an apartment where you have the single dwelling units are lined up and you basically have a common wall.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you've got a vertical separation between lower units and upper units, then that changes your building requirements.
so a duplex is considered a row house, basically.
It can be if it's built with a common wall,
Right, yeah.
from foundation to ceiling.
I don't see many. Two-story duplexes and triplexes with 1 unit on the first floor and 1 on the second.
No, it's when you get into that 4 to 6-plex.
Okay. And that may be a reason we stop this at 3-plex for the medium density, it's just a thought. I mean, and as we look at the walkabout, we just need to make a decision.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there as a consideration or something that you want to consider when you create that cutoff point between a 3-plex and a 6-plex.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a preference or a dog in the fight on that myself.
But that makes sense when you look at low density versus high density, or medium density versus high density.
And it may be, so, and in this town, I don't think, are there any? Yes, there is, I'm trying to think if there's any 4-plexes that are all row house style, there is, there's one on Ocean Shore Boulevard, there's a few. 4-plex row houses.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thought we can do is maybe tie in the row house definition. Or appropriate for RMs versus others, and there's just some thoughts on how to do that, looking at, as we look at the definitions. Okay,
I'm actually like that.
permitted uses, all uses in the R1 zone. We're gonna live with for now. Two family dwellings, three family dwellings, and then 4 question mark. Right, we're gonna decide if we go 4. And then C. Permitted uses. Transient rentals. I will put it in the draft and then we'll talk about what it means. I mean, this will cause possibly some issues, but when you actually look at. This is 2 thoughts here. When you look at where most of the RM will end up being, there's not that much single family. And you bought. And built a single family, especially if you built one in an R9. I don't know what you were thinking, but in an R2, R3. The reason I keep bringing this up. Is if we started letting transient rentals in the RMs. If somebody wanted to build. 1,000 square foot home. Even a single family home in an RM where it was appropriate. And then went through the transient rental process, they've now got a much more affordable home, second home. It's a pathway to ownership that I personally would never do, but a lot of people are a fan of. It's a pathway towards many things, and I don't think it's bad for the town. It's kept confined in an RM zone. It's not in single family, and I'm not, the more time I spend in Ocean Shores, the less in favor I have of transient rentals in the R1 zone. But that's just me. It's just something, discussions about transient rentals in the RM, anyway.
It's a tricky one because on one hand, it makes sense because it's a residential area. On the other hand, people who live there go, I don't want that in my neighborhood where they're in and out, causing disturbances, they're on vacation. Who knows what would go on, because they're leaving in 2 days. So if you asked the neighbors in that area, they would probably not be in favor in those neighborhoods, but
Yeah. And
it's a slippery slope.
go ahead.
That's why public hearings are held, right? And any of this would require that to get feedback from exactly those people that are living there, so we can maybe understand more, maybe get some feedback, maybe educate. Because I kind of think in Ocean Shores, we should be encouraging growth of people coming into town and spending their money, right? And if we have areas of development, I don't think it's a bad thing.
And I'm just looking at the damage by not doing it.
Right.
Exactly, they're gonna go somewhere else.
Right.
They're gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm for it. It's just I'm hesitant as to what areas.
Exactly, and I would agree with that. It
For-
would have to be on the designated areas that we know we're not gonna erode any R1 to a great deal that's there already, even though they might have built up in a non-R1 area, but they built residential.
And before I forget, on the transit rental code, I got a notice in the mail the other day from the city of Hope William that a neighbor on one of our Hope William properties was doing a transit rental. And you have the opportunity to object.
Oh,
I forgot you could do that in Portland too.
Conditional use.
Mhm, yeah.
So is that how?
Oh, they're proposing to start a transient rental?
Transit rental, yeah,
Okay.
and then all the neighbors get a mail. Saying, you know, your neighbor is proposing to do a transit rental. Does that mean they're getting a conditional use permit, or
Sounds like it.
I didn't think you needed a conditional use permit, that's okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a reason, you know, that they're sending out public notices within, you know, it sounds like our 300-foot radius,
Yeah,
notice.
yeah. So I mean, that's the option, is you can make transit rentals a conditional use. But every transit rental would then require a conditional use hearing? Is that true?
That's what that would require.
And how onerous is that?
That's what most of my life is right now, scheduling public hearings.
You haven't even got the transfer that.
And I haven't even got the transient rentals. Exactly. I could put somebody on staff, if we did transient rentals there's enough interest in transient rentals. I mean, that is one of the most common phone calls we get in the planning department is, can I do a transient rental? And if we gave them any kind of a pathway, I have people wanting to propose variances or, other things that would, I don't believe they would be successful, getting through the, first through the planning commission and then the public process to put a transient rental in an R1, so I try to really discourage them from wasting their money in even trying to get, either a variance or some other form of deviation from the code. But there's a ton of interest out in the world today regarding that subject.
Oh,
So
no, but
if
that's
you
why.
guys, if this community can find a place where it fits well and it doesn't disturb, the existing, quality of life in our R1 area, then, we're kind of missing an economic engine that, not just for the business part of the community, but somebody that we've got a lot of, snowbirds that want to leave their house during the winter and go south. And their only option is to do a month, a more than a month rental.
And nobody's looking to rent for a month, please.
Nobody, yeah, that's not really a deal, but if they could, get into a transient rental pool or something like that, then they could be, there would be an economic, viability to that property while they're gone to Arizona.
It's a problem. So a conditional use would require conditional use hearings for every application. If we made it a conditional use in the RM. If we made transit rentals a conditional use in the RM
Yeah, then they would be subject to a hearing,
every time.
every time. Well, once you, I suppose, there's code that talks about how transient rentals that were permitted back in the day are handled today. But,
Doesn't apply. We're talking new here.
no, that's what I mean, but you can include language that says, once this parcel is approved through the conditional use process for a transient rental, then it could be used owner to owner as the property changes hands. Something to consider.
We'd certainly be busier.
Oh, here. No, we don't do conditional use. We don't stop with conditional use. We're lucky with that. We only do variances.
Yeah.
Take me and Marshall to hang out the whole.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty lonely room.
So I mean, I really wanna figure out a way, what's the appropriate as a. And maybe it'll be more informed as we go around and look.
Please consider that. I sent you something the other day that caught my attention. And that was accessory dwelling units permitted all over town right now. But they should only be allowed to be rented if the homeowner actually lives in the house.
Yeah.
And maybe some method of doing that with transit rentals might be applicable, I don't know.
Well, yeah, you can get into law state. Portland's actually lost its lawsuit over that recently,
Yeah.
where you could only have an Airbnb is if you lived in there more than 9 months a year.
Yeah. I think San Francisco has some kind of deal.
But that's not the vacation rental, transient rental model. Vacation rental, transient rental model is Ojai, Seabrook. Now I know Lamona. Which is,
Well, the idea was to have somebody there to keep an eye on them.
yeah, and that makes sense to me for ADUs, and I really took that to heart when we get to the ADU part of the
So
code.
either ADUs would be the rental or the main house stuff would be, I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's definitely when we get to the ADUs to be.
As long as both units are rent.
I agree with that, definitely. But I just don't know, so. Do we want to beat this around anymore, or what do we want to do on transit rentals? Or we're gonna be back at this next week, so we can go through it again next week.
I don't think there's any new news here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just either a permitted or a. So let's just, I'm for now leaving it as a permitted, and as we look at the map, and look at the areas, we start to get uncomfortable with that. Then we look at it and say, maybe it's a conditional.
Which page do you want?
I'm on page 5 of the packet. Permitted use in the R2, which will become the RM. We said all uses in the R1 zone, 2 family dwelling, 2, 3, and 4 question mark family dwellings. And C, transient rentals, which is the mic drop. All righty, conditional uses, we're gonna strike B, resource extraction again, because we can't figure it out. It's gonna get easier. Prohibited uses. Those don't think we want homeless service in the RM zone, so that should all be okay. Density. And we're really gonna lean on our 2 experts over here, because this is the only different part. Let's start with lot size, because that's the easiest for me to conceptualize. So. 7,200 is the standard lot size. I realize most of these are 8,000 if they're duplexes or more. So let's say at 7,200, 36. What's that, 1,800 if we go to divide it by 4? 4,800 square foot lot, is that right?
Yeah.
And what's 40% of that? Because we have a 40% coverage. So that's roughly 800 square feet. Yeah.
Right.
Which is doable.
Right.
In your opinion, Marshall?
Yeah, that's similar to some of the development that has occurred in town.
So taking a 7,200 square foot lot, subdividing it into 4 and putting 4 800 square foot homes on 1,800 square foot lots.
That meets with our 650 minimum.
Yeah, and the other thing we can talk about is getting rid of that 650 for these lots. Or getting rid of that 650 for the high density. That's the other option, you know, saying if you want to do that.
We gotta count the setbacks and that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Building separation.
Yeah, typically, yeah, what we've seen, and I'll draw on most of them, what you'll find out though is that tax constitute the 60% you can't build in anyways, the 40% rule.
Right.
So if you take all the setbacks,
We have front and backyard setbacks, you have 4 things on a lot, there's a setback in the front and the back, what are they, how do they work out with 4 buildings on a small lot?
what have you been seeing when you've been subdividing? Do do you know,
Well,
Marshall?
we're subdividing, a row type house. I've only got one subdivision where it's a horseshoe shaped structure. And, the entire structure, has adhered to the 20 and 25 foot front and back setbacks. As a complete unit. So once you look at those. Of course, because you have a firewall between the two, there is no 5 foot setback on the side yard between, there is no side yard, so.
But, so I mean, we'd have to just sit down and look at that and see.
Consider how that pencils out.
With detached, you have. Oh,
10 feet between structures, probably.
what about the front and backyard of one? Is the front yard of one, the backyard of the other? Or are they-
That's what you'd have to work out. So
Yeah.
it would basically have to be roughly what my thought is, and you can. With this is, I would say it would be 25 feet from the original front of the lot, or 20 feet before subdivision, and 25 feet from the rear of the lot before subdivision. Then they can sort of be clustered off of that, and then you pick, see what I'm saying, Marshall?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, the building official and I talked about, setbacks as it pertains to the accessory dwellings or the accessory, structures, garages. They can be set within 5 feet. So that's a pretty good sized structure sitting right on the property line that's legal today in today's development. So whether that was a garage sitting there or an individual unit, a dwelling unit. I don't know that there's a substantive difference between, the concept of reducing a setback so that you could get more units per lot.
Is there a firewall, regulation regarding Structures that close one, 10 feet.
I think at the 10-foot mark, we're not seeing the firewall required.
If I remember right.
That's something that needs to,
Yeah, from my Portland experience, it's 10 feet.
yeah,
Anything 10 feet and beyond, you do not require the sheet rock and all that stuff for firewall.
On the outside.
on
Oh,
the,
yeah.
unless there's a special circumstance. I do have a situation where we've got a high fuel loading structure on a commercial piece of property that is gonna have to be located more than 5 feet because the fire loading or whatever would be sufficient enough to jump a standard separation.
We had a 6-foot alley and we had sheet rock in the exterior. 3/4 inch sheet rock, even worse.
Waterproof too.
Hmm?
Waterproof sheet rock.
No, and then you had veneer over that and then waterproofing and then siding, so it was firewall,
Yeah, wow.
not fun. 2 sections of sheet rock. It can be done, but it's not easy. So, I mean, I think we'll pencil that around, but in general, we're talking about allowing lot size of 1,800 square feet instead of 7,200. That's sort of where we're going. I was doing math in my head, so you gotta make sure.
Makes sense to me.
So that would basically subdivision short plats or boundary adjustment, the minimum lot size of 1,800,
Mhm.
which is nice. Do we, instead of 2-family, we would say multi-family dwellings must have, do you know why the lot size of 8,000 square feet was in excess of the 7,200 for a duplex?
Probably just repeated the covenants at the time.
Any thoughts on that one, Marshall?
No, but I know we came like 1, 2, or 3 square feet short on a whole bunch of those lots along Point Brown, and I have to look at it really close.
Really?
I mean, it's like, it's almost like there was a survey error or something else, because I've got, like a 7,999 square foot lot on a triplex that requires 8,000 square feet, and so.
So what is the purpose of that in your opinion? I'm trying to figure out why that's even there. When
Maybe to create more open space or keep that open space concept.
Well, we
that's-
had the 40% rule, sort of,
Yeah, which kind of covers that.
Yeah,
and at the time of this, there was no 40% total structures, including accessory structures requirement. So, maybe that goes.
But I thought when I read it, I looked at it, I went, really? Wow, that's a lot of space required for that.
I would recommend that we just make it 7,200 across the board for simplistic purposes. Because otherwise, as we just discussed, it gets a little confusing. What is it? Is it 7,200?
Yeah,
Is it
I-
8,000? Because like you said, Marshall, if it had been 7,200, that would have allowed for an opportunity
yeah,
that was stopped because of a square foot.
yeah. Well, it creates more process, because if I had somebody that wanted to do that, I would encourage them to file for a variance to the dimensional requirements of the code.
Exactly.
Okay. So I mean, thoughts on striking it or making it 7,200? I'm just trying to think what the advantage of that is.
Because we're talking multifamily in this instance,
Yeah.
I would strike it. I mean, the 7,200 I think is fine for R1 and that makes sense for there. But where you, we've got the 40% rule anyway.
Right.
I know when I read it, I should say, I've highlighted it.
Yeah.
Question marks all over it. 8,000 square feet per structure. Wow, that's crazy.
You have the 40% rule and you have your setbacks. Why do you
Yeah,
need
but
that?
why do you need that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why that was. It's like they were trying to pigeonhole them into certain lots and get beyond the zoning. All right. So the process will be, I will draft this and we'll bring it up, probably not for a vote, or maybe if we're ready to comfortable, we can vote on this. I mean, you can thumb through the R3 and the R4, and I'll tell you they're the exact same.
Thanks.
Right. They just add 3-family dwellings and 4-family dwellings. I mean, the two big things that we're really gonna have to, and I really think it'd be great if, Dan can come to the next meeting is to get his input as the longest standing member of the, permitted versus conditional use for transient rentals. And the not having to do common wall subdivision to get the lots, to get the smaller homes on a smaller lot. I mean, in your mind, Marshall, what's gonna happen first? If we did transient rentals and 1,800 square foot lots, are people gonna rush out there and subdivide lots to get 4 transient rentals, or are they gonna be single family home transient rentals, or both? Probably both.
It's gonna be a combination. But it's gonna spur a lot of development.
So then you get to the. Alright, that's why we have public hearings, that's why we have public input. And I know I'm sounding pro-development. But when I do the walkabout, I think that there's, lots of opportunities that are missed for, green spacing and other things, and I think sometimes done right, the 4 unit subdivision actually comes out much better looking than a single family wall-to-wall ground. Do you agree, Marshall?
It certainly can, yeah, the cottage concept.
Yeah, the cottage concept actually is better, more open space, and, you know, the deer have more places to walk through and they're not tripping over gravel.
And I agree with the missed opportunities as we are currently zoned. And so what we need to do to the best of our ability is make those changes that allow those opportunities. As we keep talking, doesn't mean they'll happen, maybe they will, but at least the opportunity exists where it might not now.
All right, so let's roll out the map and we'll do walkabout and we'll see where we are at. Talk about my wellness over there. Every time I go back there, I think we're gonna make that area like a. It's a obvious failure. Yeah, I'm not really, yeah, that'll be my last. Well, let me walk you through sort of what we did. The only thing I was comfortable with so far was the first walk. So, it's a start. Tourists. We did resort tourists, and then we talked about this residential, low, mixed use. And again, I went back and counted, what was like 7 houses all.
It just says not a lot, even with the court, there's not a lot.
Well, that was good. Well, totally, I want to talk about this second. This area still has been somewhat fulfilled. These are all, these large lots are extremely encumbered and owned by individuals. Use motel space. This is a lot owned by individuals. We owned all of it. But according to Marshall, I need to go walk that within the winter, because this is all wetland. Well, Marshall, this area you were telling about me that's extremely wetland encumbered.
Yep, from there, all the way down Fairwood Drive, this is really Eagle along in here, and then also along in this area here, all the way back across. And then almost all of these lots along here, this is what would be a buffer area, that between the row of lots and the large one. That area is a trough. There's a little teeny bit of upland, and for those of you who've driven that area, you see, we permitted 2 lots to develop in there. They mitigated wetland buffer, stayed out of the wetland themselves, and it basically, they're gonna have the smallest home you could build on those lots sitting on top of what little bit of upland existed there.
And that's what it is.
Yeah.
Rural Court is drivers, are a lot. It was built,
It's not dry.
well, these 3 are, because they're building.
Yeah, I helped put the sewer lines in there, and I can tell you that in the winter time, That was an outreach challenge.
It's built,
Yeah.
that's all built already.
Yeah.
And these lots were never, most of these were never built.
No.
Casper Court was built. But what is the zoning in Casper? I know I'm going back for a half, so this is R2.
Casper Court is encumbered by wetlands as well,
Yeah.
all the way around the back of that wetland buffer.
It's all,
Primarily, yeah.
so, I mean, this is all currently duplex. R7. R8, which is all a little crazy here. And again, I'm not ready to put a pen on this yet, obviously. But what's all this back here? Under the 8, you know? Yeah, there's a couple, there's one on Nichols Court.
Yeah.
This happened in covered, right? Or what?
Yeah.
And why was this, I know, this was put in as R9 just because they were crazy. They were hopeful. Yeah, there it is, right on the back of them.
Yeah.
But this is not showing, you're showing lot division and we're not on this one, okay. There is not lot, you just can't see it. Oh. What would you call it? So, I mean, the question is, do we just make this RM and say, okay? Or what? Okay, really the question in here. And these, this isn't part of Oywood, is it? These?
No. Those are,
Built? No,
there's a single, one or two single family residences on the, would be the east side of Topland. And I don't believe there's anything, we have a wetland mitigation we just completed on this lot here, and it's gonna be developed as I think single family.
so if we go RM, yeah, or just R straight. Straight medium density.
Yeah.
And that's the thought, right? To basically capture all of this duplex, triplex, and what's going on here, you know?
Yeah, there's like a triplex and a fourplex next to each other.
So depending on what we make RM, if it goes forward, we'd be okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a new single family,
Oh, yeah.
being built on Inglewood Court.
Yep.
I believe. And we've got a single family on this side.
Yeah, I mean, so we took all of this R8.
Right.
There's a new mobile home in there, actually, a manufacturing home, yes, one in here, correct? Then we don't know these. These are all subdivided, somebody subdivided.
The twin homes are
Twin homes,
separated, yeah.
So I'm just, well, I'm not ready to put a pen on this yet, but I'll probably come back to the next meeting with a pen on it. We'll talk about it, maybe.
And the owner of these twin homes along Greenview Drive also owns, the lion's share of these lots in here and would like to develop those in a similar fashion.
So how quick can we fix this all?
Not a matter of fixing anything, it's a matter of,
Yeah,
Just, I think this area making it multi it just makes sense.
it's where it was intended for,
Yeah.
with or without a golf course. It's a great story. Yeah, I just don't know, Chris Shaw was, he's the only golfer that I don't think that's the name. No, Tony Lima. Casper, Palmer, Nicholas, so. Before I get to my walkabout, this is the area, where is it? Right here, Wallona. Storm, Silver King, you guys just need to sort of, on your own. If you've never driven there, you wouldn't know you're in Ocean Shores. Have you ever driven there?
I don't know if I have.
You're riding over there. Well, that's the B and B right there, right?
yes.
Oh, okay, then I've been down there.
Then you go down here and it's like condos
Yeah.
and then manufactured homes.
But it's a mystery. Yeah.
Then you go down here and there's storage units, RV parking.
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah, because we have, auto storage. We have.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff though. So that we need to look at in depth. And I'm not ready to even touch on anything on that. This, I think, will end up being medium density. I'm guessing, because it's triplex now. This will probably, I don't know if there's anything over fourplex on this side.
There are, There's one common wall, that's where the U-shaped common wall subdivision is proposed, is in that.
That would be single family.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's an existing anything over fourplex.
Right.
There's a couple fourplexes scattered in here, I'll probably get it over, but I have to approve that, but. So we've been talking about this at like, well, my walk, pencil, because I'm right with pen and being very on top. So we'll start on this really interesting corner, which is Ocean Spray with this, and I swear he's doing it on a single lot, that's second place. You know,
There's, I think a 6 and a 4 or 2 sixes side by side, on a single lot with a single family, a small single family residence flanking that.
right there. I just started.
Yeah.
This is actually compared to these apartments down here, these are much nicer. The sunny's nicer, and it's a nice place, you're just away from amenities.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they're building some fairly nice apartments in here. This we need to talk about, this is actually B2, right?
Yeah.
This is one that someday I'd love to see if we had the right thing to do. To make this commercial.
I'm surprised that it hasn't been snatched up, subdivided and turned into transient rentals myself already. I mean, that's,
That's for a store then.
yeah, it is, you know, I mean.
Everybody wants that Walmart, or their mini Walmart. And so is this where those existing Robin's Egg condos are, in this section, right, in one of these lots?
Yeah. Are they there, Torn, or are they this next block? They are in this, on this block.
And then over here, you've got Casimir cottages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
And, oh, we did these two?
We did all three.
So that's kind of what we're talking about, like you've seen, if you wanna see what it looks like, just a quick walk down Ocean Spray, you'll see Casimir cottages.
Yeah, Moose Harbor has another example of that.
Yeah.
And there's currently one under development, over here on the corner of Tonquin and Silver King. That I think is gonna have a similar look and feel to the Moose Court thing, in that they're separate units. They're zoned for transient rental, being built as transient rentals. But they're looking at being tucked into a, you know, kind of a well vegetated, kind of a natural looking bungalow type thing. So,
That's sort of what Casimir tried to do here.
and he did really, I think he did really well on the Moose Court one.
This one's a little.
To extent, this sand was hard to vegetate.
Okay, yeah, but, so this area, when I went around, I said, is really, what's really interesting to me, and you don't see any scale maps, is all these greenways. City owns that, right?
These other green, so that's, I don't know, I don't have a good answer for that. It seems that the city has control of them, but if you read the covenants, it's for the benefit of the neighborhood, to the surrounding lots or to the division.
Well,
Do you have a better,
The city owns it, but the covenants do say.
so I have a hard time giving somebody an individual authorization to put a pathway through one of those greenways to the lake. Because I feel like the entire neighborhood would have to approve that based on the language in the covenant.
well, this particular greenway here, they're awesome.
That one has all, it has infrastructure in it, and it's the only access to those landlocked.
Right. So eventually, you know, you have to use the road, greenways, that's kind of why that's all in there.
The sewer infrastructure is already installed there. There's vacuum pits back in this area that serve, you know, for development of those lots.
But if somebody wanted to develop the inner lots, they'd have to build a road, the city, do all that, right? That's the way it does.
Kind of, yeah.
There you go. But it's an incredibly nice opportunity up here. Commercial and in here. These also could be very attractive, medium density, the duplexes.
Right.
Divided into two 800 square foot lots. This whole area is nice with the greenways between. That's sort of it for this walkabout. Single family, on the water is 80% built. Some of these longer courts are only 20% built. So a lot of the available unbuilt. But what's interesting in this part of town, which I think makes it attractive, and it's just neither here nor there, is the lots are already divided. There's always these greenways between the lots. And I saw that driving over here, so So it's kind of a nice thing that you're always screened from your neighborhood and you're not fenced in here. So that's what, nothing, bit of development going on in here, but single family is not overly developed at all in this. And all of these, I don't understand this one. Do you know what this tract O or whatever that is the single high density piece?
I don't.
It's in there. It's okay, it doesn't need to change in R4 for some reason. But this, and all of this, there's one duplex in the world's weirdest triplex. Right here,
Rockland?
yeah, I haven't figured out that triplex yet, what's going on. It's strange, though. But my recommendation is we just leave this RM.
Yeah.
However, as I say that, and I thought about this because I've driven this, I drove it again this morning. It's actually not overly developed. In single family, it's probably 40% single family. Is that be a good guess for you in there?
Yeah, and we're continuing to permit, single families in that
Oh,
area.
it's going in.
Yeah, yep. We don't have any proposals
If
for,
we said all RM allow transit rentals,
that's gonna give you some grief in Division 10.
there we go. That's what I'm saying.
All of this here, so.
That's the problem. If here, if we said RM transit rentals, pretty undeveloped on this side, a few single families.
Yeah, there are a few single families developing in there,
And there's a few on either side, not a lot,
right?
because that's not what the pool, a few in here, not a lot. And then Ocean Shore Boulevard separates you, and if you like me and little Ocean Shore Boulevard, it's your own fault. So we need to really think about if we say it's a permitted use in RMs, this obviously is an RM opportunity. But then you've got impacted.
That's why you have the public hearings.
I know, but still.
Yeah.
I just bringing that to mind for my driving around today, and so that really stood out at me as. Thinking, as an advocate of development, and as much because. Looking at what not allowing transit rental did here. Basically ruined here, ruined here, we've gotta have them somewhere. But this strange little strip, I never knew it was, because I ride my bike all the time. I don't even multi-family.
It's already permitted in here, you can use it.
Yeah, anybody can hear. So it's, maybe it's a residential medium A and a residential medium B. I hate to say it, but maybe it is a residential medium A and a residential medium B.
Oh,
I know, it's just more and more confusing.
no.
But, transit rentals allowed, I think all of this is, we can at least see it, how it's responded to in the recommendation. And again, none of this is until after November 6th. We will touch this before November 6th.
No, we don't want to do that.
And so the last thing in eight is one of the least built divisions, I think, up in this area. Not a lot of construction over here. And again, when I some old construction, not a lot of new.
Yeah.
Again, I think a lot of these have these green belts behind them, which is unique to Ocean Shores.
Those lots seem to require a lot of fill. They're right on the verge of having wetlands.
Which one? Not
These,
these.
yes.
These?
There's some areas on Cleats that, that are,
Down here.
yeah,
Yeah, isolated wetlands though.
yeah, would be
They're
isolated.
not there.
Yeah.
Nope.
We have more freedom now. So we had more freedom to properly develop than isolated. With mitigation, with things. I mean, so. This is something to talk about. If you want to look at it. If you reverted it to R1. For no new multifamilies or. I mean, this is something where the existing R3 almost made sense as written, the code. Because you could put a single triplex on a lot, nobody's out there subdividing these lots that you know about, they've already out, you know.
What would be interesting would be the research to find out of these lots here, A was developed, and B, how many of them are full-time residents here?
Well,
That's right, the, for our statistics, if we know 40% of the people actually live there and 60% don't.
Yeah. And again, it's for the long term, but I just think this is something we're really gonna struggle with. Because this is this little sliver. I mean, here's different.
Or these guys are gonna say, hey, you let those guys, how come not us? You're gonna get one too.
Here's different if you allow prison rentals, because you basically got high density across some high density, there's very, very little. Single family impact. By allowing transient rentals here, there's impact, we just need to think about it. Maybe it becomes residential medium A and residential medium B. I know, I hate to do it.
No.
It's not really-
We want that.
So that's sort of what I come about from my walk. Very interesting area, and it's live happening right now, it's a great place to see. Cashmere's two properties, and these decent looking apartments going up, and then right next to it, I just put my head in my hand when I saw the Highland sign in the single. On the corner lot, that would have been a beautiful third apartment, as the people who, this city wanted it to be. But it didn't happen. It's a single family here, so that's interesting, and, next week, deal with this stuff. I just don't know what to do. I keep, every time I drive, and they only, I hate to say it, they only describe it as ugly. You go down there. Just
Well,
look at
it's
it.
it is, it's such a mishmash. You go, what is that?
And you go through the really, really nice bed and breakfast, the beautiful house that's got a big lighthouse on it.
Yeah, and of course,
Yeah.
in there, and
Then
then you
you
just got.
Couple layers, you've got rundown condo.
It is a mishmash.
But hard to live. It is, and then these courts are just
Mixed use industrial.
huge square courts, so there's nothing but pavement,
Yeah,
they're just ugly. It's no other way to put it.
yeah, I'm not sure why they developed those that way.
I have no idea what the thought
You
was.
know, maybe one of the courts being, zone B1 where you could have some commercial activity going on and maybe some on-street parking or something, but.
Then there's a huge structure going in here, about the same guy that's building on the lawn.
Yeah, that's the, I think there's 3 units or 4 units being developed there for transit rental.
Obviously, the same architect that did the one on Menard.
Yeah.
I can tell. It's the exact same building somewhere else.
Yeah.
But again, if you wanna look at another one, the guy going out behind the portal. That's what you.
It's a little different, you know.
Yeah, they look nice, they're cool, when you're putting residential right sandwich between high grade asphalt and.
Yeah,
Which-
yeah, absolutely.
High grade shouldn't be in there anyway. From, I mean, they don't fit the zone.
No.
They
don't, and, but when we run out of B2, we run out of light industry, show me where on the map light industry goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
We got it. And then we hold them. So let's see the walkabout, and I might get really brave and put a pen to some of this. And we can talk about that, and then we'll work on that, and most of this we'll talk about some more next week, so I sort of like going back, is that okay with you guys going back?
No.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I have to go back and look at this, but we just put pen on 3 of them, so. Good.
That's good.
All righty, thanks. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks, all righty. Oh, my God. All righty, well, on the agenda, we next have, oh, we didn't put public comment second time on the agenda again. We're gonna do it without it being on the agenda, and I'll remind you. I can look at the agenda better next time. On reports, I'm gonna briefly say that Mark and I did go to the Blue Zones. I'll start and let Mark finish it very slow. Blue Zone is a limited. They have a fairly large grant from somebody, but they're like years of doing anything. So, I think, Mark, we left not hopeful, and Mark and I have decided that we're gonna try to push the biking and walking subcommittee on our own, and if Blue Zone comes along later, fine. But it'll be another 6 months.
So I missed the main meeting because I was traveling. They brought to this meeting 18 proposals. And they wanted the folks in attendance to bring this down to 8 proposals. plus what turned into county opportunities, some cooperative opportunities. Ocean Shores, Hope William and Elma were at our meeting. They had a morning meeting. Pardon? The food. Oh, that was, okay. So in any case, they did have two opportunities for us on the Blue Zones chart. One, update bicycle facilities, particularly street crossings to meet best practices and state guidance. And two, install wayfinding and bike parking at recreational destinations along the route, like Hyden's Trail, et cetera, et cetera. So
Parks and that sort of stuff, yeah.
yeah, those were the two that they had for us.
And
Now,
the third one,
yeah, revive the Walk a Child to School program. Okay, that was the third one. So, as Gary said, we're going to step forward on our own, expecting that we're not gonna get a lot of assistance from the group anytime soon.
yeah, that's sort of where it was. And on the. With lots of discussions, and I'm not sure how to do it, and I talked to, what was really good is the CEO from Summit Regional Health was there.
Yes.
Very energetic guy, really interested in community health. Truly think he believes in community health. He, he says basically healthcare versus sick care. The better we do with healthcare, the less it costs for sick care. And all. Really, very realistic. But he's also very realistic. The lifetime Grace Harbor resident. He said we're islands. He said Ocean Shores wants what Ocean Shores wants. Aberdeen, hopefully want what they want. Alma Montesino want what they want. And it's really nothing ever really works together. But what Mark and I are talking about is gonna be August 29th, I think, at 2 o'clock. We're gonna have the first meeting of or public meeting of the walking and biking subcommittee, and we'll come up with a better name for it. That really, kind of, we're hoping spin into more of a healthy Ocean Shores initiative, which is what we really need. We'll steal all of the Blue Zones principles around the walking and biking thing. All of the things the Blue Zones talk about, sense of purpose, meeting, all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, we'll really look at walking and biking infrastructure in the city. And I had hoped to bring the Blue Zones along because they're sort of like the CRC and their grants folks. That's all they do. They go get grants and get grants and get grants or appropriated funds, which they won't get from us. What's really what we're hoping to do on the subcommittee is find some community involvement and some volunteers who really want to dig in, do some work as a volunteer, working with Mark and I, interfacing with city staff to find out what they believe are some of the easy, medium, hard projects. Start looking at working on grants and all that sort of stuff so we can do things, so we can just make this a more healthy community from a walking and hiking and exercise standpoint. And I think participating, especially when you get to listen to their urban architects, you get a lot of good ideas hearing, because that's what these people do all the time. They talk about we need greenways. Well, definition of greenway is 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. Well, that's 90% of Ocean Shores. So, now it's just signage and safety and that sort of stuff. And it's identifying the danger areas, Ocean Shores Boulevard, and those couple of constricted spots and some of those other areas. So I think it's all doable, but it's really going to take finding somebody really excited in the community to sort of take this on and then go from there, which is what we do next. My dream is in 2025 to actually, and I'll do it if we get moving, have a bicycle event. Tour de Shores would be the name of it. It's a great name, Tour de Shores, because Summit Regional Health does Tour de Wellness. It's the ride from McCleary to Westwood. I did it this year. It's a great ride. It's a lot of fun. And it's not that hard to put on a bike event that becomes a showcase. And we do it sometime in the first 3 weeks of July, in between Sand and Sawdust and Hog Wild. And when the Tour de France is going on, great opportunity to bring people. We get 400, 500, 600 people in this community who like to ride bikes, but we first need a safe place for them to do it. Kind of where we're at. Not that the ride from McLaren to Westport safe is not even close, but it's, I've done it a couple of times, it's not hard, so that's where we're at with that. So that'll be, I'm gonna work with Sarah on getting notice out, I'm on a couple of Facebook biking groups, I don't know if there's I'll look for if there's an Ocean Facebook walking group, I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware.
We'll think about it, but we'll get that advertised, we'll advertise at city council meetings. And the whole idea of the August 29th meeting is just the old butcher paper, list of ideas, talk about what they mean, start cooking it out, then start getting people to sign up, that I will work on this.
If we come up with something soon enough, we can get it in the Ocean Observer.
Well, it is, you can put it in, what's have to go in by, do you know?
It's gotta be in by the end of the month, so.
Okay. Send me a note tomorrow, remind me, and
Get something
I'll give it to you, we'll get it into the Ocean Observer too.
Okay.
Because we reserve the room. We'll do that. All right, so even though it's not on the agenda, we're gonna do additional public comment from a kind of helter-skelter session. In the room, comment.
This question actually, on August 29th, where and when is that going to be here?
2 o'clock here.
Time?
Yeah.
Same time? Okay,
Yeah, we just wanted to do it on an opportunity
awesome, thank you.
to make it easy for everybody. And we definitely committed to that date now, so we're good. And it's the biking and the walking and biking subcommittee of the planning commission. But hopefully this group will give us a better name. Awful name. But by our bylaws, that's what we have to call it. And by calling it what you guys call an ad hoc committee, which I. And if somebody recommends an ad hoc committee for biking and walking, I'm quitting. Add it up. So I'm gonna talk about some other city council agenda items that we've taken care of, so we'll do that. Online, Dawn, anything for the group after listening? Nothing heard from Dawn. Vina, anything for the group?
Yeah, I do have one comment, and it's about what's been missing from the conversation, and that's a discussion about pyramid zoning. Is there a reason why you're not talking about pyramid zoning? Because if you're making all these changes to the, medium, low, and high density zones, if you're still allowing pyramid zoning, you're not solving anything by changing the zoning. What is the reason that you are not talking about pyramid zoning?
Vina, I think we did talk about it in residential, and it's if the group feels we want to say that you can't do single family and multifamily zoning. That was the discussion we had today about pyramid zoning. And I think that's going to continue to be a discussion item. I didn't use the term pyramid zoning, but I certainly can. And I think my personal opinion is pyramid zoning has hurt us more in the business districts than it has in the residential districts. But because of historical pyramid zoning, we've had a lot of single family development in multifamily zones. And I think without public input, it's kind of hard for us to figure out where to go forward with that. Does that answer your question?
No, it doesn't, because it's not up to the public. It's up to the administration as to how they want the city to look. And that is the plan. That's why you have a comprehensive plan. In my opinion, by doing the specific, which is what you're doing by changing the zoning, without first working on the general, which is the comprehensive plan, that it's never going to match up. The city needs to decide how they want the city to look, create the areas in the city that they want those zones to appear in, and then do a zoning change. This is not a taking. So in my opinion, the approach that you got, you guys are doing great work. I appreciate all the work that you've been doing and, looking at in the field and trying to figure out what would be appropriate. But instead of trying to please everybody, the neighbors or whatever, if you had a vision for what the city would be, where you want this development to occur, make those zoning changes, then, you know, that includes also defining those zones like you're doing now, low, medium, high, whatever. But the city has no obligation, in my opinion, to try to please everybody as to what their development plans are. The city needs to make its own mind up what they want the city to look like and create those appropriate zonings in those locations. So I'll get off my high horse now. But that's kind of, and especially in the commercial zones, the B1, B2, you've lost essentially all your B2 zoning, pretty much.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
Good, Vita, and we will continue to look at that, and there was that very
Okay.
first discussion about saying no single family in the R2, and I'm in the medium density, we'll bring that back again. I don't think we're done, but when you look at some of the areas, it's, yeah, you're right, it's just hard. Because a lot of people have bought lots with the intent of building a single family home, just happens to be in an R3. And I understand, it's not that right.
Right, but the city has no obligation to preserve that person's vision for what they want to do with the property. So anyway, are you gonna have a discussion about the commercial zones as well?
Right after we get through the RH, probably in 4 to 4 weeks, I'd say.
Okay, all right.
That'll be the next
Thank-
one. That's the challenge. And that's why we've asked everybody to relook at Wawona Silvertake. Because that is an example of where it went wrong. So, all right,
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Anything else?
Don did pop back on. I don't know if he wanted to make a
I don't think
comment.
so. You would.
Okay.
Don, you have anything to add?
No, I appreciate everything you guys are doing and keep it up. Thank you.
Good. Well, good to have you back with us, Don. All righty. Do I have a motion? Oops, I gotta announce the next meeting. I'm sorry. Next meeting is August 8th, 2023. Thorne, would you do the minutes? It's supposed to be Dan, but I'm concerned Dan's gonna continue to have issues for a little bit. Sure. So I'm gonna move that to you. So the next secretary will be Mr. Ward. And next meeting's August 8th, 2023. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Terry?
Second.
Mark, second. All right, all in favor? Mind-numbing sessions.